just before this talk about carbon sequestration, carbon credits, MRV. My job is to explain what all of that is, how it fits within the DDA plan. And we're going to demo a product and a service, as a tech product that helps us assess exactly all of those things. But first, let's talk about why we need carbon sequestration and what exactly it means and how it fits into our lives. This is the way our planet used to look. My father-in-law and mother-in-law grew up in Delhi in the 60s and 50s, and they remember a very different Delhi than what we experience today. Clear blue skies, beautiful weather, beautiful environment. It's a very different world than what we experience today. And why is that? What happened along the way? Somewhere along the way, our world started to change. It went from blue to slightly yellow as we discovered fossil fuels, as we discovered burning coal, we discovered burning gasoline, we discovered new ways to travel. And along the way, with all of those burning of fossil fuels, our emissions went up. Carbon dioxide emissions flooded, and of course, we've had some of the hottest years. Somebody told me that this is actually one of the hottest Februaries we've had. But we have this great opportunity to reverse that entire trend. A lot has been happening. I spent 15 years in the solar industry in India in 2008-9. You can imagine how long ago that was. Our goal was to make solar cheaper than coal. Now today, you know what a wonderful rollout solar is happening around this country and around the world. It's now changed the way we think about energy. There's a lot happening to bring that line down. We have electric cars. We've changed the way our grid works. Many of us are becoming more vegetarian and vegan around the world. The way we travel, the way we work, it's all starting to change. But you see, the world is stuck. It's stuck. Because no matter what we do, no matter how much we reduce, there's only so far we can go. Now, we need to get rid of the rest of all of this. And that's carbon sequestration. That is taking carbon out of the air, not just reducing. You heard that in the last panel, reduction is not enough. We actually have to take carbon out of the air. And the question is, how do we go about doing that? And Dr. Varma in the last panel said one of the best ways to do that is to use nature-based solutions. And that's true. And India is going to be the leader in nature-based solutions. And that's a wonderful thing about nature. It takes all of these emissions that we've been polluting this world with out of the air. And you all know how that works. The whole idea of planting trees, watching them grow, creating these beautiful parks, and DDA has an incredible history of doing that. But to understand how much is in here takes a lot of math, takes a lot of study. A small plant, we know how the carbon cycle works. I'm sorry, I don't want this to be a science lesson. Some of you may be worried, oh no, I failed science, I don't want to go through all that again. But we remember the cycle. Right? Leaves take carbon out of the air, respire oxygen, and it's wonderful to know we can measure now how much carbon is taken out of the air by every tree. We actually have a number. Now you're wondering, how much does that mean, 20 kilograms of CO2? Well, roughly, this is somebody from Gurgaon taking a car trip to Noida and traveling back. This is how much carbon gets emitted. So if you had a tree, every year it would take this out of the air, everything that you're putting into the air. That seems like very small, right? Like one tree doing that little every year. And it also changes. You know, a small tree does very little. A big tree does a lot more. A mango does quite a bit. Teak, not as much. Bamboos, very little. The number changes based on what you've planted, when you've planted it, and of course, how much you've planted. The size and shape and species, everything changes. Now, Rohit talked about the need for carbon markets. Carbon markets don't just give you credits if you plant a tree. That tree has to survive for 20, 30 years. It has to grow, and it has to be measured every single time. Can you imagine going around and measuring every tree in Delhi? That's going to be a full-time job for all of us if we were to just do this, right? Now, that's a very difficult thing to do. So what we've done is thought through, how could we actually do this? In fact, Delhi is quite amazing with what we have around. It's one of the greenest cities that I've had a chance to be in. An incredible number of parks, just parks. And we heard also about wetlands, 250 not there, but at least another 700 wetlands. An incredible number of acres and trees and parks in this beautiful green city. that if we could measure how it's growing, if we could measure how big they are, if we could measure every single species, we could put a number as to how much carbon is taken out of the air. If we could put a number to how much carbon is taken out of the air, we can get credits, we can get companies interested in this. You heard about the Thai person talking about that they offset all of their events with carbon credits. Imagine being able to measure all this. Now, it's impossible for each of us to go do this, so that's the piece of tech we've invented. I'm going to walk you through how it works, then I'll demo what it looks like. We start in a satellite. We start up in the sky, and we go straight down. We can zoom in. Satellite pictures are quite amazing. We can come down to the city. We can come down to a park. Not only to a park, you can come down to a single tree in a park. Measure how big it is, the species that it's in, aggregate, put all that together for the park, add it up for the entire city. This is the beauty of AI in pictures, right? Add it up for the entire city and tell you how are things growing, what's happening, without all of us having to go measure every single one, right from the sky. So let's see how it actually works. Here's a demo. Remember the parks I told you about? These are all the parks in Delhi. So we're going to go down to one of those parks. There we go, all right. We're going to go down to one. It's Asita Park, very close to here, to sample. So what we do is we take a park, we go zoom into where it is. We have to know where the park is, so we draw a line around the park to know. It's called a boundary, so we know exactly what the park looks like. So there it is, that's the park. And this is Google Maps. So you can imagine, how do you see trees in this? First, we get rid of most of the things around it. That doesn't look too bad. That doesn't look too bad. But the satellite images that you use in Google Maps, that's not good enough. I don't know if you can see trees in here and start counting them. Very difficult, right? So what we do is we use a totally different image. This is an incredibly high resolution satellite that you have to actually find and buy and get. Okay, let me take a closer look at this. Now, can you see the trees? Right? You can see almost every single tree around here, right? Now, of course, imagine your job is to sit there and count every tree by hand. That's going to take too long. So instead, we use AI. Now, AI is wonderful. It can actually sweep across this entire thing and get rid of all of the stuff that's roads and buildings and things like that, and can identify big and small. The first pass is usually not good enough, so we do another pass, and now we can identify how many trees exist. And you see there's some yellow, some red. So the yellow and the red is looking at different sizes. Now, one of the things about carbon is it doesn't matter how many trees you plant. It says, I've planted so many trees, I've planted so many trees. Companies talk a lot about planting trees. What matters is how many survive. What matters is how are they growing, how big are they becoming. So this is not enough. We now need to go and see how big these trees are. We actually know what each of these blocks looks like, but the satellite doesn't yet quite know what's big, what species it is, and so on. So how does this actually happen? The way this is done in the world today, it's very, very manual. People go and they actually measure. Can you imagine going to measure? Even if you measure 10% of the park, it's an incredible amount of effort to go and see every single tree and try and measure this. We've developed a totally different approach. I'm sure everybody here knows how to take a selfie. You've posted on Instagram, YouTube. I was going to say TikTok, but nobody here uses TikTok. So that's what we say. All we ask you to do is go take pictures of your favorite trees. So this is the way we collect what is called ground truth. Ground truth is what's really happening on the ground. Not the entire park, not all the trees, just a sample of them. All right? And each ground truth tells us how big is the tree, and our AI system can automatically see what species it is. And by looking at how big in the species, we know how old it is, how long it's been around. And all that from just taking a few photographs. And then we can map those photographs to different parts of the park. So this has come from this part of the park, and we'll send a bunch of people out and they'll take more pictures, and we'll tack it to different parts of the park. Now, once we have a sample, so maybe instead of 26,000, maybe a few hundred trees of photographs, that's it, just some photographs, we now can tell you how much carbon has been taken out of the air by this park, by this tree, every single year. 500 tons. I know these numbers, like, well, what does 500 tons really mean? 500 tons. In the last session, someone mentioned that in India, the average person emits roughly 2 tons. So this is 250 people's yearly emissions. Everything that they do in the year, eating, traveling, all the stuff that they do with cars, all of that taken out of the air by one park. Now, 250 doesn't sound like a lot, but that's just one park. We have parks like this all over Delhi. We have parks like this all over India. And we can aggregate all of this together. So this is how the first part of the tech works. Very simple. We look at deep satellite images. We take a few photographs, put it together, and we can come up with a number that can be converted into a carbon credit. There's a phrase in the last session that was used called MRV. MRV means measurement, reporting, and verification. It's one of the hardest parts for nature-based, any sort of trees and everything, to get credits. Because you have to measure this not from the time you planted it. You have to measure it every year. You have to measure it for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And it's only by continually measuring it with real data that somebody will give you a credit and says, good, now I'm willing to put money behind this credit. This is what MRV looks like. This is how MRV is done. Oh, this is great. So this is the first part. Now, how do we actually, you and me and all of us sitting in companies or in groups as individuals, participate in all this? So we created a different thing for people. You can put this onto your iPhone and watch your trees grow. Yeah, imagine that, right? You can put your trees onto your iPhone or your Android or any phone and watch them grow. Here's how it works. This is what's running on my phone now. Right? It's running on, several of my friends are here from Minzo. It's running on our company now. How it works is it gives you a view of your world. Now, I showed you the globe at the beginning. This is what my world looks like. It says James's world. Tells me how many emissions I take on and so on. I've planted my own forest. I've planted this in Andhra. It's a large forest, and I take it every day. I can actually use a satellite image. I can go see where it is. I've got photographs of the people who've planted it. Everything that I showed you on the other sheet is sitting right here. It also tells me how much carbon has been taken out of this forest over time. So it sits right on my phone, how much I've taken out. But what's really interesting is this. Watch the wheel. That's 2030. This is in 2040. This is what my emissions, I'm getting better every year. You see the sweeping thing that went over to the left? That is my forest taking out all of my emissions. That's me becoming, you've heard the term net zero, the phrase net zero? That's me becoming net zero by planting trees in a park, by measuring it with satellite, matching it to my emissions. And I plant this every month, just 290 rupees every month, and I keep planting my trees, and over time, this is what my forest will look like. This is how we can all participate. It's not just about DDA, it's all of us participating with the DDA, with our cities, to jointly plant and to take part in the way the parks and the trees are developing to take carbon out of the air. You heard in the last session that it's not just individuals, that companies also want to do this. Companies also want to participate. So we've created a model where companies can do exactly what I just showed you for individuals. You can go in there and say, this is where our offices are, this is how many people work, this is the kind of travel that they do, and the travel that we do even in flying, all of that you just enter, and it'll tell you what the emissions look like. What's beautiful about this piece is it can tell you what the emissions will look like in 10, 15, 20 years. Remember, every year we're getting better. Our grid is getting better, so our electricity is getting less carbon. Our cars are becoming more electric. We're traveling by more metro because the metro is getting better. We have more trains. All of this means that over time, even if I do nothing, my emissions will keep going down. See that circle is getting lower and lower? So as a company, you can project using this to see how much emissions do I have left over that I have to take out of the air. And then you can go and buy your own forest. Maybe a piece of Asita Park or something. And then plant with the DDAs, plant with your cities, plant with your tree holdings, and that will match to how much emissions you want to take out of the air. So you've seen the entire product. Trees, amazing. But we need to measure them. Measuring is really difficult. And this is an AI photographic easy tool that gets down to every single tree, measures how much carbon it's taking out of the air, and puts it in your pocket that you can take with you. We're working with the DDA to do this for the parks in DDA, so hopefully this is just a mock-up. You'll be able to come and see, not just where the parks are, not just how many trees, but also you'll be able to see every year how much carbon those parks are taking out of the air, how many new saplings have been planted, all of this connected back to emissions. So we talked about this, remember the Earth getting stuck? Yeah, this is the Earth getting stuck. But I'm hoping that, as we plant more, as we take advantage of more of the options that our cities are giving us, that we can get back to the kind of world that my parents-in-law enjoyed, to the kind of Delhi that our grandparents and our parents used to talk about, cleaner, bluer. I'm going to end here and just open it up for questions. People often ask me what MINZO stands for. It stands for My Net Zero, because it's only when each one of us takes a little bit of interest, takes a little bit of effort, that the whole planet can get better. Thank you. I realized that I probably finished early, but I know that everything else was running late. But I will, any questions or comments? Thoughts? Yes.
Kindly wait for the mic.
Oh, okay.
Let's get the mic. Indeed, sir. Thank you for making science fun.
Thank you.
Thank
you for making science
I think
fun.
you've really simplified it quite a bit. Your question, sir.
It's quite interesting to see the way you brought everything in a very simplified way.
Thank you.
But it will be more easier for us to see that how to measure it. If you can explain a little bit more about ready in the corner for AI use. Because DDA has a lot of parts. How quickly we can do it, and what are the methodology that can be utilized quickly, some of the calculations, etc. If you can put.
All right, so now I'm going to make science not so much fun. That was a very technical question, so forgive me, I'll have to give you a very technical answer. For the system to work, we only need two things. We need to know what the boundary is. The boundaries matters. Now, if you go onto the DDA website, you will find there are boundaries. It's called, okay, bear with the technical stuff, KML files, which are the boundary files. So there are boundary files for every park on the DDA website. So that's the starting point. The second thing we need to know is species plantation history. Now, we can work without it, but the output is not so accurate. If you tell us these are the sets of species that have been planted, the ability for us to narrow down for the AI to work faster is much easier. This is the only two things we need. Typically, it takes a week to 2 weeks to get the satellite image downloaded. This is not OpenStreetMaps or Google Earth. Like, you can't just go cut it out, right? So having the satellite tasked to be able to find the right date, find the right image, no cloud cover, all of these things takes a little time. And once that system is set up, our AI system does take some time to learn for every park. And sometimes it can do it in 5 minutes, sometimes it takes a few days. And that's something where we watch to make sure that it's learning. What it's learning is grass versus shrubs versus saplings versus trees. These are all very different. And sometimes it can get confused. And so for us to be able to decipher those is important. For example, if you have a green basketball court, I mean, it looks green from the sky. I mean, the AI system is very good about distinguishing that. But sometimes there are people who have crops, have planted flowers. I know there's a flower festival going on. Being able to distinguish that, it'll take a few days of that working out. And then you can get the first number. It's very quick. So within a few days, that number's out. The next step is the photographs I said. So going around and taking photographs. We have, so far on our platform, we have over 20 million trees all across India. So from Andhra, Maharashtra, everywhere. Many, many people are using this to track the trees. To give you an idea, they also go take these photographs. It takes a person, in the old days, I showed you how they were measuring with the tape and everything. Typically in a day, they could do maybe 100 to 200 trees, and they're very tired, they're exhausted, and they write any number down, and the numbers are not reliable. All of those things happen. Photographs are very easy, and they typically do 500 trees in a single day. Typically, it takes about 3 to 4 days. For a park like Hasita Park, maybe 2-3 days, and that's enough. So that's photographs is the second thing. And then the system reruns again within a day. So from beginning to end, the longest time period, you asked the question of time, is satellite image, because we have to get that and get that cleaned. Everything else within a week to 6 days is done. Yeah. And from your side, it's really the boundary, the plantation, and then take some photographs. Take some selfies. Selfies and trees are really good. That's also good. We can do that. Yeah.
Excuse me, I wanted to know, how do you go cross-checking? There's so much of urbanization going on, and so many trees are cut. So, do you make a listing of how much is cut, how much replanted? So that is a very important figure,
Excellent.
because what happens, to be honest with you, we have a plantation drive. So we always give every year, there is so much of plantation done in various parks, but there is no listing of the mortality rate.
Yes.
So that is one thing I want to know with your system.
Absolutely.
Are you going to update all that, and the actual figures being there, or calculate the carbon assets and all? Because otherwise, it is all eyewash.
Exactly.
Because that's
Exactly.
what's happening in the present scenario.
Exactly. I think that is so true. That is exactly what's happening in the present scenario. We built this exactly because people are only claiming plantation without tracking. And tracking is so important. And not tracking, did I plant it, but tracking 6 months later, 1 year later, 5 years later. The way the system works, I didn't show you this, but when you plant, we ask you to take a photograph of the time that you've planted it. So I can see the saplings. That photograph is geocoded. So just from the photograph, I know exactly in my satellite image where every single tree has been planted. Every time an image comes through, typically this high resolution image, we can get it every 3 to 4 months. So 4 times a year, I can go back to that spot and tell you what's happening and see what's happening. So you can track exactly what you want over time. And that's the way it's set up. The first setup takes time. After that, we track it annually, and then 6 months, 8 months, and you can report it. The other thing I notice often is, I know that the DDA and other large institutions have to plant saplings on behalf of other parties. Being able to report that is usually a paper report. The advantage here is you'll have a geocoded report of where those saplings and plantations have happened by a completely third-party, satellite image, as it were. Right? So that's also the map of the Lincoln. I think this point that Ma'am made about survivability is crucial. That's one of the reasons we built it this way, so that once we know from day one, you can track it over decades. Carbon credits are not given the first year, the third year, or the fourth year. It starts in the fifth year, and it's very little. It's 25 or 20 or 30% of the credits they'll give it to you because they don't believe it will survive. After 20 years of survival, you start to earn a lot more credits. So this is the way the system works, right? That survivability is built into the system, but it needs a way to track it, and that's what we do. Yes? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, yes.
The human intervention is there. We are relying on that data, and that might not be giving the correct picture.
That's true. So the only human intervention we need is ground truth photographs. So people who have to go on the ground and take a picture of what trees exist on the ground. And the advantage of the photograph is you have to use our platform to do it. You cannot just take a photograph and forward it to me on WhatsApp. That won't work, all right? So because you could do any tree, right, and then send me a photograph. It has to be on our platform. Our platform geocodes every photograph, direction, and therefore that is, I know, truth, that there is a geocoded photograph of a tree that exists on this particular date. That's the only intervention I need.
But then you have to have a sizable sample for that.
Yes, the sample varies from standard to standard, and again, it depends on how you stratify it. Most of the parks in Delhi have a fairly uniform approach, and so roughly 5 to 10% of the sample is all we need. In this case, for us at the park, if you take 2,000 samples, and I said 3 to 4 days of photographs, that's all we need. and then the statistics will allow us to go up. The sampling rate is also, this comes back to ma'am's question about survivability. You have to repeat the sampling every 2 years, and we sample a different portion of the park every 2 years. So that's how the data set builds over time. Right. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so do the species matter a lot? Absolutely. Okay, we're getting scientific technical again. Every species has a different wood density, has a different carbon content. So there's a unique allometric equations. All my scientist friends know what I'm talking about. So we have unique allometric equations for all the Indian species, most species around the world. And that allometric equation database is regularly updated as research goes on. So when I showed you the number of trees, our system will actually tell you how much of each species. And then the sequestration is calculated from that. Age, species, and growth. Yeah, and growth. That's the canopy cover.
Excuse me. How is your AI different from NDVI imaging?
NDVI. Okay. NDVI is, yeah, that's a vegetation index. Okay, there's NDVI, there's mean vegetation. There's many different techniques to measure green cover in an area. Those are not good enough for understanding the canopy boundaries and identifying each crown. We use a neural network process that identifies and then grows out that way. NDVI and MVI are, okay, I'm sorry for the technical stuff. Those are just features that the neural network uses to be able to build this out. Yes.
Hi, James. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. My question is slightly crooked.
Crooked? Is that
yes,
what? Okay.
In the sense that, and I also I'm a planter, come from a space where greening's been highly talked about. Species definitely matters, but we are sitting in the Aravalis, right? And Aravalis has never really been known as a extensively green forest. It's always been very arid, all right? When we were making the master plan, we went to Japan and they were talking about how important it is to plant local species, kind of go back to eco restoration, which kind of goes back to the natural geology of the place. Now, how do you solve that conundrum? Like on the one hand, surely a kikar, which is a very arid kind of a tree, is not going to provide the same canopy cover, not the same number of leaves. And how does your system begin to unwrap this particular conundrum of geology and the fact that it was always arid? It was never meant to have very dense green rainforestish pictures that you showed, for instance. So how do we wrap ourselves around?
So great question. Our goal here with this tool is to create a technology that allows us to monitor what's happening from the time you've made a choice to plant to the time it grows and connect it to survivability, growth, and carbon. However, this point has become very important because some of our clients are asking us, we want to do 20 million trees. Where do we do it? What do we do it? And what do we plant? Which is the question I think you've come to. One of the things that's happening with our database as it's growing is we can now decipher what species grows best in what condition by actual data. We know that this species in this situation grows. It's not a substitute for many of your geological or geographic experience that most of you have, because that is much longer history. But we can provide that data to your work to show this species doesn't survive here. We have history to show it's never survived here. We have satellite data to show that it's never survived here. Why are we continuing with this process? We're not a lobby group. We can't lobby with the group, but we can provide the information and the data so that project designers can become more thoughtful about the choices they make, if that's helpful. It's horrible. I agree, yes. Yeah. Right. I have to tell you, I'm an electrical engineer, so the only thing I know about trees and parks and plants are the fact that I enjoy them a lot. Building this tech has taught me a lot about what really happens. It's not, these points that are being made, it's not so random as to just go plant a tree anywhere just for carbon. Carbon is just one measure. And the advantage of our tech now is we're working with folks who are like yourselves, to say what other measures can we watch? Can we watch animals? Can we watch water? We now have an approach to moisture and soil organic carbon. We can watch that from satellite imagery. So we're starting to do all of these things as ways to provide data to experts such as yourself so you can lobby. Yeah.
So I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I wonder how extensive your database is regarding the trees species that we have in Delhi, because when you zeroed on to a park and you zeroed on to a tree, it showed a quercus, that's an oak tree.
That was just a picture. That was just a movie image. Good idea. Thank you. Thank you. That's a good point. So we don't yet have the answer to that question because we've just started the work with 2 parks. Our goal over time is to build this entire inventory by geolocated with species data so that you'll have a fuller list and a picture that's more relevant for India, for us here. Thank you for that.
Can we start selling carbon offsets? We are ready with it. Is there any
Okay, is there a possibility to sell carbon offsets, especially from this? This is an incredibly complicated question. I'm going to speak about this in the next panel as well. The regulation for a government entity to be able to monetize carbon is uncertain. Okay, I'm not saying it's a no. I'm not saying it's a yes. I'm saying there's a lot of gray area here because this is an accounting problem. The government may have already accounted for it. So then how can you sell it? This is a double counting. This is the point you made about greenwashing, I think. A lot of work in carbon forestry especially has been double counted. People sell credits twice. We have to avoid those. So until the regulation has resolved what is included in which bucket, you heard in the last session, compulsory market, voluntary market, and so on. We have to resolve that. So I don't yet have an answer for you because I'm not the government of India. But we are working with them to show them the data so that they can say, okay, now that we have the data, maybe we can frame this.
So, sir, in that scenario, that the quantity is not this situation which we all need. It should be the quality, like sir has said, arid. So you cannot have ether. That's an invasive species. So you have to, I mean, it has to be a coordination between the technical experts or the
Absolutely.
people who are there, plus this, whatever you are going to
Exactly.
give us. Because it is not only the quantity I'm saying, it's the quality also.
Yeah, very
because
good.
if you look for the environment, we have to see if the indigenous species here and the ecology, the ecosystems, which we have been saying since yesterday.
Yeah.
So unless we go into that, this will have no meaning.
Exactly.
Because
I
it
think
will be just an eyewash. Like I said, like if you do not have the mortality rate, you have no, sequence of doing how much plantation, how many carbon assets are there.
Exactly.
Similarly, that was one part of it. But the second part, which is the most important, is if you look at the environment and the ecology, if you do not know the species and what quality of air and what quality is there, depending on the soil and the climate and the other conditions which are required. So this has to be a proper coordination with all the experts.
Which is why we're putting this in the middle of DDA. We're not sitting outside of it. Our role is to provide the data and the information so that the DDA and organizers and experts like you can make the right sets of choices. Right? And I think it's incredible. One of the questions about invasive species, one of our clients has said they've got a large park inside their manufacturing facility. They wanted us to differentiate between local species and invasive species, and we were able to account for it. Now, we can give them the data. What they choose to do with it is an internal policy matter that they'll have to take. In the same way, we'll give you the data. We can make it very rich. We can follow mortality. We can make it geolocated. I'm hoping the data will give you all of the backing you need to make the choices. But the choices are the most important. We can only give you data. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You've clearly stirred a lot of curiosity. We'd like you to kindly stay on stage with us so we can thank you with a memento of the DDA Green Expo. I request Mr. Durga Prasad, our executive engineer, to kindly join us on stage to present our token of gratitude. Thank you, sir, for your valuable expertise and sharing your knowledge on stage. So I guess we all know the next